Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems. The ones you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. Now, most podcasts put the promotion and cup rattling stuff halfway through or even towards the end. The slightly uncomfortable business of self-promotion is usually the last thing that they recommend you do. But because I'm hoping you're asleep long before we get there, I need to put this stuff up front. As always, the show is brought to you by supporters on Patreon. I'm hearing from more people all the time how valuable they find the show. And those supporters who have the means to help fund it, to keep it going, and help me to reach new audiences are much appreciated. So if you're making use of Sleepy Time Tales regularly to help you to deal with sleeplessness, and you have the urge to support the show, and most importantly, if you have the means, please check out patreon.com/sleepytimetales, or go to the link in the show notes or from the website to take a look. If you sign up, you will have the satisfaction of knowing that you are helping to support the rest and lifestyle improvement of thousands of people. And over and above that, there are real rewards available from as little as $2 a month. At that level, you get early releases of the main weekly episode, and there are bonus and special edits of the main show and bonus episodes at the $5 level. This week, I'd like to thank Sean O, who signed up recently. Sean is another member of the Lifelong Insomniac Club, the one I think a lot of us belong to, and the one that you really don't want to belong to. And he and his wife both listen to Sleepy Time Tales at night to help them to sleep. So Sean, thanks very much to you and Denise for your support and for listening. But also, if monthly contribution seems like maybe a bit much, there are other options as well. Besides the Patreon, there's also the tip jar up on the website and the merchandise store. So you can take a look there too. But another huge way to help is to simply spread the word. And I want to re-emphasize something that I spoke about last week as well. I was chatting to a listener recently and mentioned how they wish that they could support on Patreon or give a tip, but just can't afford it. Now, as I said last week as well, while we live in a capitalist society and money is how we buy things, it is very important for me to emphasize that times are tough. People are struggling and they need to put their money into many other things. So I definitely could use the financial support. I really don't want anyone who can't to feel guilty. Listening to the show is enough. It's all that I can ask of you. Especially if at least if it's helping you. If you'd like to go another step, spreading the word or letting me know that you're listening and finding value in that is amazing, and I do love and appreciate it. So if you can't provide financial support, please don't even worry about it. And if there are people in your life who you think will benefit from listening to Sleepy Time Tales, just let them know. If you recommend the show on social media, please make sure to tag me in as well so that I can spot it and I can thank you. You can tag me at Sleepy Time Tales on Instagram or Twitter. And last but definitely not least is I have to give credit to the music of the show. That's a very important part of the identity of the show. The song is Un Désert by Kumiko. And while since starting the show, I've always recommended looking for their work on the Free Music Archive. The Free Music Archive is actually going through a bit of upheaval and stuff is quite difficult to find there if you can at all. So the person behind Kumiko, who is actually, that's one of their sort of band names that they work under because they have different styles of music. Their website can be found at loyaltyfreakmusic.com. They've got a lot of very cool stuff, mostly fairly chill electronic type stuff. It's fun to listen to on its own. And also if you have a creative project, a podcast or video or YouTube or something like that, Most of the stuff is on Creative Commons public domain licenses, so there's probably something there that will be very helpful for you. And I think that's enough of that. Back to the show. Thank you very much. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales? What is it for? This strange idea, this strange thing, this podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to. But lack of sleep is a health crisis in the 21st century, and this is a podcast that is intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Do you find yourself lying awake at night, with your mind spinning in emotions in turmoil with anxieties of the 21st century life? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to help you into a restful night. I'm someone who has struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. My parents had sleepless nights with me for many years, and even once I got old enough not to bother them anymore, sleep was always a struggle for me. I knew a lot of people used to like listening to TV, or tried sleeping rather with the TV or the radio on, but I resisted because I preferred silence to sleep. But I discovered when I tried listening to podcasts, when I figured that I wasn't going to get any sleep anyway, that droning voices actually did have the tendency to act like a tranquilizer almost for me. They didn't have the light that would disturb me on the TV or music or ads of the radio. And the sort of level, consistent voices just were ultimately just plugged into something in my brain and like switched me off. I started listening to some podcasts specifically for the purpose of helping me to sleep, and when I ran out of those, I actually found out that there are podcasts out there designed for it. I tried a couple out, recommended them to people, but sometimes the recommendations didn't really take with others. There was different criticisms, but I thought to myself, I can do something that doesn't quite fit in the sort of window of the existing shows, and maybe I can reach some other people who the other sleep podcasts couldn't. And so I started up Sleepy Time Tales. Now every episode starts with this long intro. It's there for two reasons. Obviously, first up, if you're a new listener, I need to explain to you what the podcast is for, how I think it's useful to engage with it, and sort of make for a case for why I believe it's worth your time. For people that have been listening to the show for a while, there's something a little bit different. This intro is sort of the time where they take to get themselves ready for bed, maybe have a drink of water, brush your teeth, settle down to sleep, and sort of get your mind into a more restful state by preparing for the story to start. Because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to build a space together, somewhere comfortable you can settle in and allow sleep to come for you. Something like a nest or a cave or a little cabin in the woods, whatever you think will resonate with you best. Now for me, as far as I know, there are a couple of different ways to engage with a show. For me, when I listen to my sleep podcasts, I need something to actually focus on. I need a story or an event or something that lets me keep my mind on something specific to stop it from spinning out into stress and anxiety. I need to focus just enough not to resist the embrace of a night's sleep when it comes for me. Some people might need something a little bit different, maybe just a background noise. Some people may like the sound of rain or the ocean, or some people maybe just some dude droning on reading a story to you that's not particularly interesting. Although tonight's story actually is kind of interesting, although a little bit on the dry side. I had a request recently to do a little bit more non-fiction, and I thought, yeah, it's been a while since I did something. So here I am doing, it's an extract from Women's Work in Music by Arthur Elson. It's quite an interesting look at women's place in music in different societies up until the time it was written. Now, obviously, being an older non-fiction thing, there's a lot of fairer sex and weaker sex type stuff. It was written in 1903 overall. But overall, I think it is well-intentioned and interesting, particularly for people that are interested in the history of music. But whatever the story is, the important thing is it's important that you don't try force sleep. Just keep a light mental grip on the tale that I tell or the facts that I'm giving, and allow the need for sleep to come for you. Now, obviously, I'm hoping that you're asleep before I get to the end of the episode, but it's very important you don't feel pressurized. This may not work for you on your first night. In fact, I would recommend and request that you give it maybe a solid 3 nights try. Download a few episodes and give them a go and see how it works for you. You may need to get used to the sound of my voice or my accent or just the rather strange idea of listening to some boring dude droning on while you're asleep. And yeah, it could probably just take a little bit of adjusting. It's also possible that one episode just isn't long enough. What I do, my issue lately as well, is I sort of tend to wake up at about 3 a.m. And then I sort of don't realize that I'm awake, and then suddenly I realize I am, and I've actually been awake over an hour, and I may not actually be able to go back to sleep. So what I do is with my sleep podcasts that I listen to, I download a whole bunch of them, and then I usually start on the latest episode when I'm going to bed, and I let them run all night. Then when I wake up at 3 a.m., my earbuds are still in, or they're just fallen out, and then I pop them back in my ears again and go right back to sleep. I sometimes even do the same thing if I wake up before my alarm. Sometimes I wake up 30 minutes or 60 minutes before my alarm goes, and I do the exact same thing. Pop those earbuds in and whoop, back to sleep again. And you may wonder, what is the point of that? Does it really help to get an extra half hour's sleep at the end of the night? And I've got to tell you that sometimes that part is absolutely the most refreshing part of my night. There's something about allowing yourself to relax completely right before the alarm that is satisfying on a level that's quite hard to express. But whether you're using it to help you go back to sleep or go to sleep in the first place, or just because that last few 30 winks right before it's time to get on with your day, it's very important that you try to relax while you're listening to this. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, this may seem strange to you. So I request that you give it a chance. Like I say, a solid 3 nights, and if after then it's not going to work for you, hasn't worked for you, then it probably won't. And so you have the basic idea. You relax and you lie in the dark, and while you do that, I'll tell you a tale. So relax, dear listener, my nighttime friend who has elected to lie in the dark, listening to my voice. You will always be safe with me, because I'm here to help you relax. I'm here to do a small part to help you improve your life in a big way, to help you to face tomorrow and the day after, well rested and better able to cope. Now, I believe very strongly in the benefits of kindness. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. And most importantly, I need you to be kind to yourself. You can't beat yourself up or rebuke yourself over not sleeping. Don't get tense if you just can't get yourself over the edge of sleep, even with me here in your ears trying to help. Frustration is one of the great enemies of a good night's sleep, and the intention with this podcast is to short-circuit that frustration, to distract the feeling we get when we blame ourselves for not being able to let go and drift into the dark. So take a breath. Forgive the fact you can't sleep and let my voice wash over you. Take another breath. Imagine the warm darkness rising up, inviting you to sleep and to a better life starting tomorrow. And if you can't let go, forgive yourself and try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, sleep is something like an enemy. But it is not your enemy. It's a natural process that we've been pulled away from by stress and life, and progress that shines bright lights in our eyes at all hours. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course, you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. This week, we return to The Diamond Ship by Max Pemberton. I'm going to pick up straight where we left off. Chapter 4. Ean Fabos begins his story. June 15th, 1984. So tonight, my task begins. I am to prove that there is a conspiracy of crime so well organized, so widespread, so amazing in its daring that the police of all the civilized countries are at present unable to either imagine or to defeat it. I am to do this, or pay the supreme penalty of failure, ignominious and irrevocable. I cannot tell you when it first was that some suspicion of the existence of this great republic of thieves and assassins first came to me. Years ago, I asked myself if it were not possible. There has been no great jewel robbery for a decade past which has not found me more zealous than the police themselves in study of its methods and judgment of its men. I can tell you in weight and size almost of every great jewel stolen, either in Europe or America, during the past 5 years. I know the life history of the men who are paying the penalty for some of those crimes. I can tell you whence they came and what was their intention should they have carried their booty away. I know the houses in London, in Paris, in Vienna, in Berlin, where you may change a stolen diamond for money as readily as men cash a banknote across a counter. But there my knowledge has begun and ended. I feel like a child before a book, whose print it cannot read. There is a great world of crime unexplored, and its very cities are unnamed. How then should a man begin his studies? I answer that he cannot begin them unless his destiny opens the book. Let me set down my beliefs a little plainer. If ever the story be read, it will not be by those whom have my grammar of crime at their call, or have studied, as I have studied, the gospel of robbery as long years expounded. It would be idle to maintain at great length my belief that the leading jewel robberies of the world are directed by one brain and organized by one supreme intelligence. If my own pursuit of this intelligence fail, the world will never read this narrative. If it succeed, the fact must be their own witnesses, speaking more eloquently than any thesis. Let me be content in this place to relate but a single circumstance. It is that of the discovery of a dead body just 3 years ago, on the lonely seashore by the little fishing village of Palling in Norfolk. Now witness this occurrence. The Coast Guard, for rarely does anyone but a Coast Guardsman tramp that lonely shore, a Coast Guard patrolling his sandy beach at 6 o'clock of a spring morning comes suddenly upon the body of a ship's officer, lying stark upon the golden beach, cast there by the flood tide and left stranded by the ebb. No name upon the buttons of the pilot coat betrayed the vessel which this young man had served. His cap, needless to say, they did not find. He wore jack boots such an officer of a merchantman would wear. His clothes were of navy serge. There was a briar pipe in his left-hand pocket, a silver tobacco box in his own right. He carried a gold watch, and it had stopped at 5 minutes past 5 o'clock. The time, however, could not refer to the morning of this discovery. It was the Coast Guardman's opinion that the body had been at least 3 days in the water. Such a fatality naturally deserved no more than a brief paragraph in any daily paper. I should have heard nothing of it but for my friend Murray of Scotland Yard, who telegraphed for me upon the afternoon of the following day, and upon my arrival at his office astonished me very much by first showing me an account of the circumstance in the Eastern daily press, and then passing for my examination a roll of cotton wool such as diamond brokers carry. "I want your opinion," he said without preface. "Do you know anything of the jewels in that parcel?" There were 4 stones lying a glitter upon the wall. One of them, a great gem of some 120 carats, rose-coloured and altogether magnificent, I recognized at a single glance at the precious stone. "That," I said, "is the red diamond of Ford Valley. Ask Baron Louis de Rothschild and he will tell you whose property it was." Would you be very surprised to hear that it was found upon the body of the young sailor? Murray, I said, you have known me too long to expect me to be surprised by anything. But it is somewhat out of the way, isn't it? That's why I sent for you. The other stones don't appear to be of the same class, but they're valuable, I should think. I turned them over in my hand and examined them with little interest. This pure white is a Brazilian, said I. It may be worth £150. The other two are jeweller's common stuff. They would make a pretty pair of earrings for your daughter, Murray. You should make the Treasury an offer of them, say 50 for the pair. The police haven't much money to waste on ladies' ears, he said rather hardly. We prefer 'em without ornament. They go closer to the doors. I thought you would like to hear about this. We can't make much of it here, and I don't suppose you'll make more. A ship's officer like that, you don't expect him to be a fence in a common way, and he's about the last you'd name for a professional hand in Paris. For if this is Baron Louis stone, as you say, it must have been stolen in Paris. No reason at all, Murray. His wife wore it in her tiara. She was at the Prince's, I believe, no more than a month ago. Does that occur to you? He shrugged his shoulders as though I had been judging his capacity, which, God knows, would have been an unprofitable employment enough. We haven't begun to think about it, he said. How can we? No ship has reported his loss. He carried a pipe, a tobacco box, a gold watch, and this. Where does your clue start? Tell me that, and I'll go on it. There were no papers then? None. That is, this paper, and if you can make head or tail of it, I'll give £100 to a hospital. He passed across the table a worn and tattered letter case. It contained a dirty calendar of the year, a lock of dark chestnut hair, a plain gold wedding ring, and a slip of paper with these words upon it. Captain Three Fingers. Tuesday. Is that all, Murray? I asked when I put the paper down. Absolutely all, he replied. Have you searched him for secret pockets? As a woman's bag at a remnant sale. Where did he carry the diamonds? Inside his waistcoat, a double pocket lined with wool. No arms upon him, not a toothpick. And you have no trace of any vessel. Lloyds can tell us nothing. There's been no report made. It is evident that the man fell off a ship, though what ship and where heaven alone knows. This, I'm afraid, was obvious. The police had asked me to identify the jewels, and now that it was done, I could be of no more service to them. It remained to see what Baron Louis de Rothschild would have to say, and when I reminded Murray of that, I took my leave. It would be idle to pretend that I had come to any opinion which might help him. To me, as to others, the case seemed one of profound mystery. A dead seaman carrying jewels of great price hidden in his clothes, and he had fallen overboard from a ship. If some first tremor of an idea came to me, I found it in the word ship. A seaman in a ship, yes, I must remember that. And this will bring me to the last and most astonishing feature of this perplexing mystery. Baron Louis expressed the greatest incredulity when he heard of the loss of his famous jewel. It was at his bankers in Paris, he declared. A telegram to the French house brought the reply that they had the stone sure enough and that it was in safe keeping, both literally and in metaphor. To this I answered, by the pen of my friend at Scotland Yard, that if the bankers would cause the stone to be examined for a second time, they would find it either to be false or of a quality so poor that it could never be mistaken by any expert for the red diamond of Ford Valley. One small fact confirmed my suspicions. The jewel in Paris was a coarse stone of little value and unlike the real gem as any stone could be. Plainly, the Baron had been robbed, though when and by whom he had not the remotest idea. You will admit that this 20th century conception of theft is not without its ingenuity. The difference in value between a diamond of the first water and the third is as is the difference between a sovereign and a shilling. Your latter-day thief, desiring some weeks of leisure in which to dispose of a well-known jewel, would sometimes be content with less than the full value of his enterprise, He substitutes a stone of dubious quality for one of undoubted quality. Madam, it may be, thinks her jewels want cleaning, and determines to send them to the jewellers when she can spare them. That may be in 6 months' time, when her beautiful gems are already sparkling upon the breast of a Raja or his latest favourite, and she never can be certain that her diamonds were as fine as she believed them to be. This I had long known. It is not a fact, however, which helps the police, nor have I myself at any time made much of it. Indeed, all that remained to me of the discovery upon Pelling Beach was the suggestion of a ship and the possession of a slip of paper with its almost childlike memorandum. Captain Three Fingers, Tuesday. Chapter 5. The Man with the Three Fingers. Dr. Fabos continues his story. I waited 3 years to meet a man with 3 fingers, and met him at last in a ballroom at Kensington. Such is the plain account of an event which must divert for a moment the whole current of my life, and it may be involve me in consequences so far-reaching and so perilous that I do well to ignore them. Let them be what they may, I am resolved to go on. Horace has told us that it is good to play the fool in season. My own idea of folly is a revolt against the conventional, a retrogression from the servitude of parochial civilization to the booths of unwashed Bohemia. In London, I am a member of the Goldsmith Club. Its wits borrow money of me and repay me by condescending to eat my dinners. Their talk is windy but refreshing. I find it a welcome contrast to that jargon of the incomprehensible which serves men of science over the walnuts. And there is a great deal of human nature to be studied in a borrower. The Archbishop of Canterbury himself could not be more dignified than some of those whose lives are to be saved by a trifling advance until Saturday. 7 such Bohemians were at my charge to the fancy fair and fete at Kensington. I had meant to stop there half an hour. I remained 3 hours. If you say that a woman solved the riddle, I will answer, in a measure, yes. Joan Fordebras introduced herself to me by thrusting a bunch of roses into my face. I changed 2 words with her and desired to change 20. Some story in the girl's expression, some power of soul shining in her eyes enchanted me and held me fast. Nor was I deceived at all. The story, I said, had no moral to it. They were not the eyes of an innocent child of 19 as they should have been. They were the eyes of one who had seen and known the dark side of the lantern of life, who had suffered in her knowledge, who carried a great secret, and had met a man who was prepared to fathom it. Joan Fordebras. That was her name. Judged by her impulsive manner, the brightness of her talk, and the sweetness of her laugh, there was no more light-hearted girl in England that night. I alone, perhaps, in all the room, could tell myself that she carried a heavy burden, and would escape from it by force majeure of an indomitable will. Her talk I found vapored to the point of hysteria. She told me she was half French and half American, just what she liked to call me. When I had danced twice with her, she presented me to her father, General Fordebras, a fine military figure of a man, erect and manly, and gifted with eyes which many a woman must have remembered. These things I observed at a glance, but that which I was presently to see escaped my notice for some minutes. General Fordebras, it appears, had but 3 fingers to his left hand. I say that I observed this fact negligently and did not for the moment take full cognizance of its singularity. Alone in my chambers at the Albany later on, I lighted my pipe and asked myself some sane questions. A man who had lost a finger of his left hand was not such a wonder, surely, that I could make much of it. And yet that sure instinct, which has never failed me in 10 years of strenuous investigation, refused stubbornly to pass the judgment by. Again in imagination I stood upon Pelling Beach and looked upon the figure of the dead sailor. The great sea had cast him out for what? The black paper did not in avenging destiny write the words upon it, Captain Three Fingers. Was I a madman then, to construct a story for myself and say, "Tonight I've seen the man whom the dead served. I have shaken him by the hand. I have asked him to my house"? Time will answer that question for good or ill. I know but this, that sitting there alone at the dead of night, I seem to be groping not in a house or a room or a street, but over the whole world itself for the momentous truth. None could share that secret with me. The danger and ecstasy of it alike were my own. Who was this General Fordebus, and what did the daughter know of his life? I have written that I invited them both to my house in Suffolk, and thither they came in the spring of the year. Okiada, the shrewdest servant that ever earned the love and gratitude of an affectionate master, could not help me identify the General. We had never met him in our travels, never heard of him, could not locate him. I concluded that he was just what he pretended to be so far as his birth and parentage were concerned. A Frenchman naturalized in America, a rich man to boot, and the owner of the steam yacht Connecticut, which he himself had told me. The daughter Joan astonished me by her grace and dignity, and to the extent of her attainments. One less persistent would have put suspicion by and admitted the circumstances justified no doubt that these people, that they were truly father and daughter travelling for pleasure in Europe, and that any other supposition must be an outrage. Indeed, I came near to believing so myself. The pearls which had been stolen from me in Paris, was it not possible that the General had bought them in Market de Vert? To say that his agents had stolen them and that his daughter wore them under my very nose would be to write him down a maniac. I knew not what to think. The situation baffled me entirely. In moments of sentiment, I could recall the womanly tenderness and distress of little Joan Fordebus, and I wondered that I had made so slight a response. There were other hours where I said, "Beware, there is danger. These people know you. They are setting a trap for you." Let us blame human nature alone, if this latter view came to be established at no distant date. 3 men burgled my house in Suffolk in the month of June. 2 of them escaped. The third put his hands upon the brass knob of my safe, and the electric wires I had trained there held him as if by a vice of fire. He fell shrieking at my feet, and in less than an hour I had his story. Of course, I had been waiting for these men. An instinct such as mine can be diverted by no suggestions, either romantic or platonic. From the first, my reason had said that General Fordebus might have come to Deepdene for no other reason than to prepare the way for the humbler instruments who should follow after. Okiada, my little man, he of the panther's tread and the eagle eye, he stood sentinel during these weeks, and no blade of grass in all my park could have been trodden but that he would have known it. We were twice ready for all that might occur. We knew that strangers had come down from London to 6 Mile Bottom station 1 hour after they arrived there. When they entered the house, we determined to take but one of them. The others, racing frantically for liberty, believed they had outwitted us. Poor fools, they were racing to the gates of a prison. I dragged the thief to his feet and began to threaten and to question him. He was a lad of 20, I should say, hatchet-faced and with tousled yellow hair. When he spoke to me, I discovered that he had the public school voice and manner, never to be mistaken under any circumstances. "Now come," I said, "here are 7 years penal servitude waiting for you on the doorstep. Let me see there is some spark of manhood left in you yet. Otherwise—" But here I pointed again to the electric wires which had burned his hands, and he shuddered at my gesture. "Oh, I'll play the game," he said. "You won't get anything out of me. Do what you like. I'm not afraid of you." It was a lie, for he was very much afraid of me. One glance told me that the boy was a coward. "Okiada," I said, calling to my servant, "here is someone who is not afraid of you. Tell him what they do to such people in Japan." The little fellow played his part to perfection. He took the craven lad by both hands and began to drag him back towards the wires. A resounding shriek made me tremble for the nerves of my dear sister Harriet. I went to the door to reassure her, and when I returned, the land was on his knees, sobbing like a woman. "I can't stand pain. I never could," he said. "If you're a gentleman, you won't ask me to give away my pals." "Your pals," I said quietly, "being the refuse of Europe, rogues and bullies and blackmailers. A nice gang for a man who played cricket for his house at Harrow." He looked at me amazed. "How the devil do you know that?" "You have the colours in your tie. Now stand up and answer my questions. Your silence cannot save those who sent you here tonight. They knew perfectly well that you would fail. They wished you to fail, and to lie to me when they caught you. I am not the man to be lied to. Understand that. I have certain little secrets of my own. You have investigated one of them. Do not compel me to demonstrate the others to you." I could see that he was thinking deeply. Presently he asked, "What are you going to do with me? What's the game if I split?" "Answer me truly," I said, "and I will keep you out of prison." "That's all very fine." "I will keep you out of prison and try to save you from yourself." "You can't do that, sir." "We will see. There is at the heart of every man a seed of God's sowing, which neither time nor men can kill. I shall find it in yours, my lad. Oh, think of it. When you stood at wicket in the playing fields of Harrow, your beloved school, your friends about you when you had a home, a mother, sisters, gentle hands to welcome you, was it to bring you to a night such as this? No, indeed. There is something which is sleeping but may wake again, a voice to call you, a hand upon your shoulder compelling you to look back. Let it be my hand, lad. Let mine be the voice which you hear. It will be kinder than others which may speak afterwards." His face blanched oddly at my words. An hour ago he would have heard them with oaths and curses. Now, however, this bravado had gone with his courage. Perhaps I made no real appeal to the old instincts of his boyhood, but his fear and his hope of some advantage of confession brought him to his knees. "I can't tell you much," he stammered. "You can tell me what you know." "Well, what about it then?" "Ah, that is recent speaking. First, the name of the man." "What man do you speak of?" "The man who sent you to this house. Was it from Paris, from Rome, from Vienna? You're wearing French boots, I see. Then it was Paris, what is it not?" "Oh, call it Paris if you like." "And the man, a Frenchman?" "I can't tell you. He spoke English. I met him at Quaz Arts, and he introduced me to the others. A big man with a slash across his jaw and pockmarked. He kept me at a great hotel 6 weeks. I was dead out of luck. Went over there to get work in a motor works and got chucked. Well, can't say for what. Then Val came along." "Val? A Christian name?" "I heard the rest of it was Emroth. Some said he was a German Jew who had been in Buenos Aires. I don't know. We were to get some stuff easy and cross back by different routes. Mine was Southampton, Havre. I'd have been back in Paris tomorrow night but for you. Good God, what luck. The best perhaps you ever had in your wretched life. Pleased to go on, you were returned to Paris with the diamonds." "Oh no, Rouge Lagoire carried those. On the ship, of course. I was to cross the scent. You don't know Val Emroth. There isn't another man like him in Paris. If he thought I told you this, he'd murder the pair of us, though he crossed 2 continents to do it. I've seen him at it. My God, if you'd seen all I'd seen, Dr. Fabos. You have my name, it appears. I'm not so fortunate." He hung down his head, and I saw with no little satisfaction that he blushed like a girl. "I was Henry Avenhill once," he said. "The son of Dr. Avenhill of Cambridge?" "It's as true as night." "Thank God that your father is dead. We will speak of him again when the seed has begun to grow a little warm. I want now to go back a step. This ship in which my diamonds were to go." He started and looked at me with wild eyes. "I never said anything about any ship." "No? Then I was dreaming it. You yourself returned to Paris via Havre and Southampton. I think while this fellow, Rouge Laguerre, he went from Newhaven. How did you know that? Oh, I know many things. The ship then is waiting for him, shall we say in Shoreham Harbour? It was a pure guess upon my part, but I have never seen a man so struck by astonishment and wonder. For some minutes he could not say a single word. When he replied, it was in the tone of one who could contest with me no longer. If you know, you know, he said. But look here, Dr. Fabos. You have spoken well to me, and I'll speak well to you. Leave Val Imroth alone. You haven't a month to live if you don't. I put my hand upon his shoulder and turned him round to look me full in the face. Harry Avonhill, said I, did they tell you then that Dr. Fabos was a woman? Listen to me now. I start tomorrow to hunt these people down. You shall go with me. I will find a place for you upon my yacht. We will seek this Polish Jew together, him and others, and by help of God above me, we will never rest until we have found them. He could not reply to me. I summoned O'Carter and bade him find a bedroom for Mr. Henry Avonhill. We leave by the train for Newcastle, I said. See that Mr. Avonhill is called in time, and please to tell my sister that I am coming to have a long talk with her. My poor sister. However will she live if there are no sippers to be aired or man's untidiness to be corrected? Her love for me is very sweet and true. I could wish almost that my duty would leave me here in England to enjoy it. Chapter 6. A Challenge from a Woman. Dr. Fabos joins his yacht, White Wings. I had given the name of White Wings to my new turbine yacht, and this, I confess, provokes the merriment of mariners both ancient and youthful. We are painted a dirty grey and have the true torpedo bows, to say nothing of our low-lying stern rounded like a shark's back, and just as formidable to look upon when we were to make our 25 knots. The ship is entirely one after my own heart. I will not deny that an ambition of mastery has affected me from my earliest days. My castles must be impregnable, be they upon sea or shore, and the yacht which Yarrow built for me has no superior upon any ocean. The boat, I say, was built upon the Thames and engined upon the Tyne. I remember that I ordered it 3 days after I wrote the word ship in my diary, upon a morning when the first notion came to me that the sea and not the land harboured the world's greatest criminals, and that upon the sea alone would they be taken. To none other than the pages of my diary may I reveal this premonition yet awhile. The police would mock it, the public remain incredulous, and so I keep my secret and I carry it with me, God knows to what haven. When we left Newcastle, bravely enough upon the 2nd day of September in the year 1904, a member of the Royal Yacht Squadron by favour and a friendship of the late Prince Valikov of Moscow, whose daughter's life he declared that I saved, we flew the White Ensign and were named, I do not doubt, for a government ship. Few would have guessed that this was the private yacht of an eccentric Englishman, that he embarked upon one of the wildest quests ever undertaken by an amateur, and that none watched him go with greater interest than his friend Murray of Scotland Yard. But such was the naked truth, and even Murray had but a tithe of the secret. A long, wicked-looking yacht. I like to hear my friends say that. When I took them aboard and showed them the monster turbines, the spacious quarters for my men beneath a couple of the bows, and aft, my own cabins, furnished with some luxury and no little taste, I hope, then it was of the Hotel Ritz they talked, and not of any wickedness at all. My own private room was just such a cabin as I have always desired to find upon a yacht. Deep sloping windows of heavy glass permitted me to see the white foaming wake astern and the blue horizon above it. I had to my hand the books that I love. They were pictures of my own choosing, cunningly set into the panels of rich Spanish mahogany. Ornaments of silver added dignity but no display. Not a spacious room, I found that its situation abaft gave me the privacy I sought, and made of it as it were a house apart. Here none who entered had not satisfied my little Jap that his business was urgent. I could write for hours with no more harassing interruption than that of a gull upon the wing or the echo of the ship's bells heard afar. The world of men and cities lay down yonder, below the ether. The great sea shut its voices out, and who would regret them or turn back to hear their message? Let pride in my ship, then, be the first emotion I shall record in this account of her voyages. Certainly the summer smiled upon us when we started down the turbid, evil-smelling Tyne, and began to dip our whale-nosed bows to the North Sea. The men I had shipped for the service, attracted by the terms of my offer and drawn from the cream of the yachting ports of England, were as fine a lot as ever trod a spotless deck. Benson, my chief engineer, used to be one of Yarrow's most trusted experts. Captain Larry had been almost everything nautical, both afloat and ashore. A clean-shaven, blue-eyed, hard-faced man, I have staked my fortune upon his courage. And how shall I forget Cain and Abel, the breezy twin quartermasters from County Cork, to say nothing of Balaam, the Scotch boatswain, or Mary, the little Cockney cook. These fellows had taken aside and told one by one frankly that the voyage spelled danger, and after danger, reward. They accepted my conditions with a frankness which declared their relish for them. I had but 3 refusals, and one of these, Harry Avenhill, had no title to be a chooser. Such was the crew which steamed with me, away from gloomy Newcastle southward. I knew not to what seas or harbourage. To be just, certain ideas and conjectures of my own dictated a vague course, and were never absent from my reckoning. I believed that the ocean had living men's secrets in her possession, and that she would yield them up to me. Let fate, I said, stand at the tiller, and prudence be her handmaiden. But one man in all Europe knew that I intended to call at the port of Havre, and afterwards to steam for Cape Town. To others I told a simpler tale. The yacht was my hobby, the voyage a welcome return of idleness. They rarely pursued the subject further. No, I had determined to call at the port of Havre, not because I had any business to do there, but because intelligence had come to me that Joan Forderbrus was spending some weeks in Dieppe, and that I should find her at the Hotel du Palais. We made a good passage down the North Sea, and on the morning following our arrival, I stood among a group of lazy onlookers who watched the bathers go down to the sea at Dieppe, and found their homely entertainment therein. Joan Forderbrus was one of the last to bathe, but many eyes followed her with interest, and I perceived that she was an expert swimmer, possessed of a graceful figure and of a daring in the water which had few imitators among her sex. Greatly admired and evidently very well known, many flatterers surrounded her when she had dressed, and I must have passed her by at least 12 times before she suddenly recognized me and came running up to greet me. "Why, it's Dr. Fabos of London, isn't it now?" she exclaimed. "I thought that I could not be mistaken. Whoever would have believed that so grave a person would spend his holiday at Dieppe?" "2 days," said I, answering to her point. "I'm yachting around the coast, and some good instincts compelled me to come here." She looked at me, I thought, a little searchingly. A woman's curiosity was awake in spite of her 19 years. Nonetheless, she made a pretty picture enough, and the scene about stood for a worthy frame. Who does not know the summer aspect of a French watering place? The fresh blue sea, the yellow beach, the white houses with the green jalousies, the old Gothic churches with their crazy towers, laughter and jest and motorcars everywhere. Mademoiselle La France tripping over the shingle with a well-poised ankle, her bathing dress a very miracle of ribbons and diminuendos. The life, the vivacity, the joy of it, and 1,000 parasols to roof the whispers in. I saw Mistress Joan amid such a scene. She, this shrewd little schemer of 19, began to suspect me. "Who told you that I was a deeper?" she asked quickly. "Instinct, the best of guides. Where else could you have been?" "Why not at Trouville?" "Because I'm not there." "My, what a reason. Did you expect to find my father here?" "Certainly not. He sailed in his yacht for Cherbourg 3 days ago." "Then I shall call you a wizard. Please tell me why you wanted to see me." "You interested me. Besides, did I not say that I would come? Would you have me at Eastbourne or Cromer, cooped up with women who talk in stares and men whose ambitions rot in bunkers? I came to see you. That is a compliment. I wish to say goodbye to you before you return to America." "But we're not going to that is, of course my home is there. Did not father tell you that?" "Possibly. I have a poor head for places. There are so many in America." "But I just love them," she added quickly, and then with mischief in her eyes, she added, "No one minds other people trying to find out all about them in America." It was a sly thrust and told me much. "This child did not carry a secret," I said. "She carried the fear that there might be a secret." I had need of all my tact. How fate would laugh at me if I fell in love with her, but that was a fool's surmise and not to be considered. "Curiosity," I said, "may have one of two purposes. It may desire to befriend or injure. Please consider that when you have the time to consider anything. I perceive that there are at least a dozen young men waiting to tell you that you are very beautiful. Do not let me forbid them, as we are staying in the same hotel." "What? You have gone to the Palais? Is there any other house while you're in Depot?" She flushed a little and turned away her head. I saw that I had frightened her, and reflecting upon the many mistakes that so-called tact may make sometimes, I invented a poor excuse and left her to her friends. Plainly, her eyes had challenged me. And the man, I said, must not hesitate to pick up the glove which my lady of 19 had thrown down so bravely. Chapter 7. My friend McShanus. Dr. Fabos at Deeper. I thought that I knew no one in Deeper, but I was wrong, as you shall see. And I had scarcely set foot in the hotel when I ran against no other than Timothy McShanus, the journalist of Fleet Street, and found myself in an instant listening intently to his odd medley of fact and fancy. For the first time for many years, he was in no immediate need of a little loan. "Faith," says he, "'tis the best thing that ye ever heard. The Lord Mayor of this very place is dancing and feasting the county councillors, and me, Timothy McShanus, is amongst them. Don't ask how it came about. I'll grant you that there is another McShanus in Parliament, a rare consated devil of a man that they may have meant to ask to the rejoicing. Well, the letter came to worthier hands, and by the honour of old Ireland, says I, 'tis this McShanus that will eat your victuals. So here I am, my boy, and you'll answer what you like, and my beautiful La France shall pay for it. Shovels of fire upon my head if I shame their liquor.' I managed to arrest his ardour, and discovering that he enjoyed the hospitality of Depot for 3 days upon another man's invitation, and that the end of the pleasant tether had been reached, I asked him to dine with me, and he accepted like a shot. "'Tis for the pleasure of my friend's company. Tomorrow ye shall dine with me and the Mayor, me old friend the Mayor, that I have known since Tuesday morning. We'll have fine carriages afterwards, and do the woods and forests. Ye came the here, I'll be saying, because ye heard that the star of Timothy McShanus was on high. 'Twouldn't be that, no doubt. What the devil else should bring such an astronomer man to Deeper?" I kept it from him for a little while, but when he rejoined me at the dinner table later on, the first person he clapped his eyes upon was little Joan Forderbrus, sitting with a very formal-looking chaperone 3 tables from our own. The expression upon his face at this passed all simile. I feared that every waiter in the room would overhear his truly Celtic outburst. "Mother of me ancestors," he cried, "but 'tis the little shepherdess herself." Ean Fabos have shame to admit it. 'Twas neither the stars of the celestial heavens nor the beauty of the firmament that carried ye to this shore, and me that was naming it the wits and beauty of me native country. O Timothy McShanus, how are the mighty fallen, no longer I hustled him to a seat and showed my displeasure very plainly. As for little Joan Fordybrus, while she did not hear his words, his manner set her laughing, and in this she was imitated by French and English women around her. Indeed, I defy the greatest of professors to withstand this volatile Irishman, or to be other than amused by his amazing eccentricities. "We'll drink champagne to her, Fabos, me boy," he whispered, as the soup was served. "Sure, matrimony is very like the same wine. Good thing at the beginning, but not so good when you take over much of it. 'Twould be married if I'd set myself to the Lady Clara Lovenlow of Kildare, but for the blood of Saxon in her veins. Aye, and a poor devil of a man I would have been the same time if I'd done it. Sure, think of Timothy McShamus with his feet in the family slippers and his daughter singing the lost chord to him. Him that is the light of the Goldsmith Club, who goeth home even with the milk. Contemplated me boy, and say what a narrow escape from that designing wench he has had." He rattled on, and I did not interrupt him. To be plain, I was glad of his company. Had it appeared to Joan Fordybrus that I was quite alone in the hotel, that I had no friends in Deeper, and had no possible object in visiting the town but to renew acquaintance with her during her father's absence, had this been so, then the difficulties of our intercourse were manifest. Now, however, I might shelter my intentions behind this burly Irishman. Indeed, I was delighted at their encounter. "McShamus," I said, "don't be a fool. Or if you must be one, don't include me in the family relationship. Do I look like a man whose daughters will ever be permitted to sing the lost chord to him?" "You can never judge by the looks, Doctor. My friend Luke O'Brien, him that wrote The Philosophy of Loneliness in the newspapers, he's 7 children in County Cork and runs a gramophone store." "Luke," says I, "'tis a fine solitude you have entirely." "Be damned to that," says he, and we haven't spoken since. "Scarcely delicate to mention it, McShamus. Let me relieve your feelings by telling you that my yacht, White Wings, will be here tomorrow night to fetch me." "Glory be to God, you'll be safe on the sea. I must trust the Colleen entirely. Look at the eyes of it. Do you see the little foot peeping in and out? Like mice beneath the petticoat," says the poet. "She's anxious to show you she's a small foot and won't cost you much in shoe leather. Turn your head away when she laughs, Ean, my boy. 'Tis a wicked bit of a laugh, and to a man's destruction." "I must remember this, McShamus. Do you think you can entertain the old lady while I talk to her?" "What, the she-cat with the man's hair and the telescope? Lord be good to me. I'd sooner do penal servitude." "Now come, you can see by her glance that she's authority upon some of the isms, McShamus. I know that she plays golf. I saw her carrying sticks this very afternoon." "To break heads at a fair. Is Timothy McShamus fallen to this? To tread at the heels of a she-man with sticks in her hands? Faith, 'twould be a fancy fair and fate entirely. Drink some more champagne and brace yourself up to it, Timothy." He shook his head and lapsed into melancholy silence. Certainly his nerves required bracing for the ordeal, and many glasses of 89 Pommery went into that process. When dinner was done, we strolled out upon the veranda and found Miss Fordybrus and her chaperone, Miss Aston, drinking coffee at one of the little tables in the vestibule. They made for us at once, as though we had been expected, and I presented McShamus to them immediately. Mr. Timothy McShamus, the author of Ireland and Her Kings. He's descended from the last of them, I believe. Is that not so, McShamus? From all of them, Dr. Fabos. My father ruled Ireland in the past, and my sons will rule it in the future. Ladies, your servant. Be not after calling me a historian. 'Tis a poet I am when not in the police courts. Miss Aston, the elderly lady with the short hair and the glasses, took McShamus seriously, I'm afraid. She began to speak to him of Browning and Walt Whitman and Omar Khayyam. I drew my chair near to Miss Fordybrus and took my text from the Common Talk. No one reads poetry nowadays, I said. We've all grown too cynical. Even McShamus does not consider his immortal odes worth publishing. They will perish with me in an abbey tomb, said he. 1,000 years from now, 'tis the professors from New Zealand who will tell the world what McShamus wrote. Miss Aston suggested a little tritely that much modern poetry could be so treated. Time is the true critic, she exclaimed majestically, and McShanus looked at me, who should say, she has some experience of that same time. I turned to Joan Fordybrus and asked her to defend the poets. The 20th century gives us no solitudes, I said. You cannot have poets without solitudes. We live in crowds nowadays. Even yachting is a little old-fashioned. Men go where other men can see them show off. Vanity takes them there. Even bridge is vanity, the desire to do better than the other man. Miss Aston demurred. There are some women who know nothing of vanity, she said stonily. We live within ourselves and our lives are our own. Our whole existence is a solitude. We're most truly alone when many surround us. "'Tis a compliment to my friend Fabos," cried McShanus triumphantly. "Let me have the honour to escort you to the casino, lady, for such a man is no company for us. No doubt he'll bring Miss Fordybrus over when they're done with the poets. Will you not, Doctor?" I said that I should be delighted, and when the cloaks that had been found, we all set out for the casino. Timothy was playing part well, it appeared. I found myself alone with Joan Fordybrus presently, and neither of us had the desire to hurry on to the casino. In truth, the season at Deeper had already begun to wane, and there were comparatively few people abroad on the parade by the seashore. We walked apart, a great moon making golden islands of light upon the sleeping sea, and the distant music of the casino band in our ears. "This time tomorrow," I said, "my yacht will be nearer Ushant than Deeper." She looked at me a little timidly. I thought that I'd rarely seen a face at once so pathetic and beautiful. "Away to the solitudes?" she asked quickly. "Possibly," I said, "but that is the point about yachting. You set out for nowhere, and if you don't like it, you come back again." "And you positively don't know where you're going?" "I positively don't know where I'm going." "But I do," she said. "You're going to follow my father." I'd never been so amazed in my life. To say that I was astonished would be to misrepresent the truth. I knew already that she suspected me, but this challenge, from a mere child, this outspoken defiance, had passed all comprehension. "Why should I follow your father?" I asked her as quickly. "I do not know, Dr. Fabos, but you are following him. You suspect him, and you wish to do us an injury." "My dear child," I said, "God forbid that I should do any man an injury. You do not mean what you say. The same cleverness which prompts this tells you that anything I may be doing is right and proper to do, and should be done. May we not start from that?" I turned about and faced her. We'd come almost to the water's edge by this time. The lazy waves were rolling at our feet. The waves of that sea I purposed to cross in a quest of truth which should astonish the world. The hour was momentous to both our lives. We knew it so to be, and did not flinch from it. "Oh," she said, with tears in her eyes, "if I could only believe you to be my friend." "Miss Fordybrus," I said, "believe it now, because I tell you so. Your friend, whatever may befall. Please to call me that." I think that she was about to confess to me the whole story of her life. I've always thought that it must have been so at that moment. But the words remained unspoken, for a shadow fell upon us as we talked, and looking up, I perceived the figure of a man, so near to us that his outstretched hand could have touched my own. And instantly perceiving it also, she broke away from me and begged me to take her to the casino. "Miss Aston will be anxious," she cried, excited upon compulsion. "Please let us go. It must be 9 o'clock. I rejoined that I was quite in ignorance of the fact, but taking her cue, I led the way from the place and turned towards the casino. The light of an arc lamp as we went showed me her young face as pale as the moonbeams upon the sea still before us. I understood that the man had been watching her, and that she was afraid of him. Indeed, no artifice could conceal so plain a fact. Of this, however, she would not speak at all. In the casino, she went straight to the side of the formidable Miss Aston and began to babble some idle excuse for our delays. McShanus himself was playing a petit chevaux and making the room ring with his exclamations. I understood that the hour for confidence had passed, and that the words she had meant to speak to me might go forever unspoken. Was it well that this should be? God knows. The path of my duty lay clearly marked before me. Not even the hand of Joan Forderbrust must turn me aside therefrom. I could but hope that time would lift the shadows and let me see the sun beyond them. And I will leave it there for tonight. If you've liked what you've heard so far, and the story definitely does seem to be going in an interesting direction, you can find the book Diamond Ship on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepytime Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get new episodes whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Un Désert by Kumiko. Check out more of their work on their website, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Good night, and sweet dreams.